everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good evening, Rush Nation. Here we are. We've got another show, as promised, another dynamite guest. And I'm really looking forward to this one. One of our most popular shows from last year. And I literally had people clamoring at me to get this guy back and do it and run it back again. So here we are. We have got one of the OGs of 5 Yard Rush. The amount of times he's been on, he might as well be a co-host. The managing editor of FantasyPros, Betting Pros, really good friend of the show, Pat Fitzmaurice. Welcome back. I feel like, you're almost like the third member of 5 Yard Rush. How are you, my friend?
Oh, that's quite an honor. Thank you, Murph, for having me. Always great to see you again. We are longtime friends, and it's always great to catch up with you. And, we're just a few hours away from American Independence Day here in the United States. So it has been, almost 2.5 centuries since, you English had your boots on our necks. But I think we've mostly forgiven you. We've gotten our payback in subtle ways, like sending the Jaguars over there every year. Still,
That's it. And you are ruining soccer right now with the tournament that you've got going on. Like, you're going to if the Club World Cup is anything to go by, you're going to ruin the World Cup, which is going to really upset a lot of people over here as well. So
yes, and we're also ruining it by putting the U.S. men's national team out there for everyone to be forced to watch. So but that's fine. We'll go 0-3 in group and be out of your way quickly.
No, I mean, listen, I remember a few years ago we drew with the US at the World Cup, so you never know what might happen. And Pochettino, former Spurs coach, might just have a few things and Chelsea coach, I should mention, might have a few things to do around that. But this is not a round ball podcast. This is a oval pigskin podcast, so it's not really oval, but there we go. We'll go with it. What's new in the world of Fantasy Pros and with you, Fitz? What's been going on, and anything that you're kind of working on and working towards getting ready for the start of the season?
Yeah, we just released our draft kit, Murph, and so people can find that on FantasyPros.com, and we've just got a lot of different material on that. Obviously, like our rankings, and I think we've provide access to some of our tools and stats there, but like articles on pretty much everything, no matter what sort of league you play in. I think we've even got some like maybe guillotine league stuff in there. I'm not sure about that, but so I've been working on that, and that's almost put to bed. I think I've got about 18 extended player notes to write up, and I'll be done. But
nice.
It is available on the site though right now, so people can check that out. And then just getting ready for, I don't know, it's kind of an arbitrary cutoff, Murph, but Independence Day, that does feel like the turning point. After Independence Day, everyone, even the people who've been ignoring fantasy football in the offseason, they come out of their caves, and we are just waiting for the start of training camp and the flood of news we're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. And this year, I always find you get the big lull after the NFL draft, and you get sort of OTAs that no one really covers, and then you got, June's very quiet, and then all of a sudden you get to training camp and it gears up. I don't really feel this year it stopped. Aaron Rodgers obviously decided to dominate that little period and get his name out there, signing with the worst kept secret that he was going to the Steelers, which everyone knew from free agency. We all know he delayed it because he didn't want to do OTAs. Fine.
Right.
Like, it is what it is. But then obviously we've had a couple of trades, and then the Dolphins have now sort of sped things up, and Darren Waller's back in the NFL. It's like, hey, look, we're in this world where just all this stuff is still sort of happening, and it is really now a 365 league, which it didn't used to be like this in sort of even as soon as sort of 10 years ago, really. The draft was kind of, you had free agency and it would tune out for a bit, and you had the draft and it would tune out for a bit, and then but it seems like now as the sport is growing and in its cultural and global acclaim with the amount of countries it's going to now, that the demand for content increases, and then that drips through to fantasy football with best ball season, dynasty season, and now we're heading into redraft season, you say, after July 4th, and the start of the Scott Fish Bowl is how I always mark the start of the fantasy season. So we're gonna. How are you doing your Scott Fish Bowl this year? Are you live drafting or are you online?
I did not do the live draft. I wasn't able to go to the Chicago draft. Had something going on this past weekend when it was being held. So I'm just getting ready for my online draft. And honestly, I have to do some studying this weekend, Murph. I'm not even entirely sure what the scoring system is. I'm a little out of the loop there. I know Scott always throws some interesting wrinkles into his scoring systems. And so, yeah, I have to do that. And I know there are always a few smart people who decide to really dig in and break down the numbers and figure out like who is advantaged by the scoring system. So I have to find those articles and bone up a little bit.
Absolutely. And Pat, you're not alone. And if you do want to do that, I actually dropped a Scott Fish Bowl review scoring video just on Tuesday using my projections, mapping it to the scoring. So there's a link in the video. So just like you, if you haven't done your studying for the Scott Fish Bowl, you can watch it. It's 13 minutes long. It's nice and short. Dropped it on Tuesday. It's on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/5 Yard Rush. You can find it there. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, give it a look, give it a watch. And there's also in the show notes the video to or the link to the total scoring I've got for Scott Fish Bowl.
I know how I'm spending 13 minutes of my evening, Murph. Thank you.
Anytime. So yeah, it's definitely good scoring this year, and Scott has put IDP scoring in there just for Travis Hunter, which is great. So it's like the Travis Hunter rule is in effect, and no kickers and no punt returns this year. I think you'll find, Pat, it's a bit easier in the sense of it's not that crazy. For Scott, I feel it's quite tame. But it's still wonky, but it is a bit tame.
Yeah, I know there are points per target this year. Is that?
There is. Well, it's the high points per reception.
Okay.
So it's like wide receiver. It's points per rushing attempt.
Mm.
So it's half a point per rushing attempt, and then there's points per 2.5 points per reception, and they get 3.5 if you're a tight end.
Wow. Okay.
So that's how he's balanced the scoring. So it is quite intricate and interesting. The only thing I don't have is if it's slightly different on because I've taken off the sleeper scoring, but I wonder if there's always something a little different, especially with kickers on MFL. So that might be the only thing, but I think it'd be all good. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I got live draft in London this year. I didn't do it last year, so I missed it. But I'm doing it this year. So we're Saturday week. We're doing our live draft. So I'm excited for that with the good folks.
Fantastic! There. Yes,
it's going to be great. I'm privileged that we get to do that here in London. So, but we're going to pivot away from the Scott Fish Bowl. And we're going to talk about fantasy strategy for 2025. As I said, this is one of the big video hits from last year, so we're going to run it back. And I feel like we're at this point now with quarterbacks where sort of late round is not dead. It's a strategy, but the early round is a strategy as well. Where's your sort of head and heart leaning towards? Do you feel like you need to go and get one of the premium sort of 3 or 4 guys to make a difference, or are you prepared to hold on and wait for later targets?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few possible checkpoints as far as my quarterback strategy, Murph. Like I will consider really only of those top quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson might be the only one I'll consider because I just think he offers such an extraordinary combination with his running ability and then, this high level passing ability we started to see from him last year, finally eclipsing 40 touchdowns. And like, he has become a great passer. Hello, Vince. He's become a great passer with Todd Monken as the play caller for the
Mm.
Ravens. Like that has just been a dream match. So I will consider him in the early rounds, not as high in the other ones. I always kind of live in fear of Jalen Hurts rushing touchdowns drying up. I don't like Joe Burrow's offensive line, although he might have to throw it 40 times every game since the Cincinnati defense is going to be so terrible. I like Josh Allen, but I just worry that, like the passing numbers weren't all that overwhelming last year because of he just doesn't have any like really ace pass catchers there. And who am I forgetting? I like Jaden Daniels too. I would also consider Jaden Daniels, but if I don't, most likely I tend not to go with the upper echelon quarterbacks. I'm actually kind of interested in Patrick Mahomes this year. I know the last 2 years he's averaged under 7 intended air yards per pass attempt. Like the passing game for the Chiefs has just kind of shrunk. It's become a short passing attack. But now with Rashee Rice back, maybe Xavier Worthy shifting to more of a vertical receiver role, and Hollywood Brown around healthy, at least for the time being. All these weapons, I think we're going to see the Kansas City passing game look a little more like it did in 2021, 2022. At least I'd like to believe that. So I'm interested in him, but really, Murph, the single quarterback target I am most focused on this year. Like, we know that running quarterbacks are hugely advantageous in fantasy, but the most prominent running quarterbacks are really expensive. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. The one who's going to run a lot and is cheap right now is Drake May. And I think we were just scratching the surface. Yes, Vince. Yeah, I mean, like, they have improved his supporting cast. He had a terrible offensive line and terrible wide receivers last year. Gotten a little better in both areas. And Drake May, I think if you took out week 18 when he only played one series, in his starts, he averaged like 37 rushing yards. And over the course of a full season, it would have worked out to like 650 yards. But if you look back on his college career, I think there's more upside there. He had 2 rushing touchdowns last year. I think he had 16 in 26 college starts. And his rushing yardage when he was in college, as a sophomore, he had 698 rushing yards in 14 games. And in college, for some reason, they statistically remove sack yardage from your rushing yardage.
They do, yeah.
It's really strange. So May lost about 200 yards in sacks that year. So really, he was closer to like 800 and, almost 900 rushing yards in 14 games. So I think there's a lot of untapped rushing potential here. And I think they said that other than, I can't remember if he was second to Lamar or Jaden Daniels as far as scrambling yardage last year. And he only had like 1 rushing yard on designed runs. And Josh McDaniels has talked about like working in some designed runs for Drake May this year. So I think there's a lot of rushing upside. And I think, like, he was competent as a passer last year, despite a terrible supporting cast. And now that supporting cast is better too. So like, I think Drake May has top 10 potential, and he's not being drafted anywhere near the top 10 at quarterback.
No, I definitely see that value. I probably have him priced conservatively, and the only reason I have him priced a little bit conservatively is the Josh McDaniels scheme is not an easy one to learn. I think if we were talking a year from now, I would be quite bullish on everything you've just said. Take all of that in and go, yeah. My concern is I can see a world where the passing yardage isn't there in 2025, only because there's a lot of new pieces. There's a lot of young receivers. Yes, they've got Diggs. That's definitely going to help out. Yes, they've got some veteran tight ends there. But I think it's a young team. I really love what they're putting together. I'll put that out there, that this isn't a knock on May. It's not a talent thing. It's just that fit's going to work really nicely. They're just going to need to take a bit of time to get that in the gear. And I think it's a question of how quickly does he come out of the blocks? And I can definitely see a world where the first half isn't great and the second half is a lot better. And that's my only concern on him, is just that, what's he going to do? But then, as you say, with the scrambling, because it is going to be a bit of a mess and he's not going to pick everything up, maybe he scrambles his way out of trouble. And we see almost like we saw with Baker Mayfield in his first year with Tampa, where he obviously, the calls weren't there. They weren't quite in sync with the Dave Canellas offense, and he just took off. And we might see more of that. So there is a balancing act to that. But I think I totally see the trajectory. And again, if we were 12 months in, I'd be like, yeah, I'd be there. But I'm probably a little bit more hesitant, only because I know how difficult it is to master that McDaniel scheme. And we've seen just as many quarterbacks fail in that scheme. In fact, nearly every quarterback has failed in that scheme, not named Tom Brady. So it'd be interesting to see what nuance he brings in to match May's skill set. And I hope it works, because I think it would be very, very interesting to watch them take off.
Yeah. And to answer Daniel's question, I am, because of the running ability, I am ranking May really aggressively. And I do have pretty modest expectations for him as far as passing numbers, Smurf. But I've got May ranked QB8. And I think I am like higher than anyone else in the Fantasy Pros rankings on him. And I have Justin Fields QB9. So, but like in every league, Justin Fields is going to be drafted ahead of Drake May. So the nice thing is, if you, and I think Fields is a fine buy at his current price. Like, but I think you can wait like another round or two and then get May.
Yeah.
Fields goes.
And I would much rather have Drake May than I would have Justin Fields. I just think that there's a lot of limitation there, and Fields has not gone 60% as a passer, except for flashes last year in Pittsburgh. He's not going to get, he's not going to get the same level of support and talent in New York as he did in Pittsburgh, with the coaching and development around him. So I don't see it in the same way that I see it with him previously. So I'm with you on that. I do think it's a world where I would mean, if I was sit there and say who would I rather take, I would definitely much rather take Drake May over Justin Fields in drafts. And I'm not down on May. I have him pretty aligned to Bo Nix.
Okay.
So I have them in a very, very, like in a standard quarterback ranking system. I have them separated by less than 0.3 of a point.
Okay. Then
so I have them in like a little pocket with Dak Prescott, and I have Patrick Mahomes there as well. So, I have the big four. Then I have Baker and Joe Burrow, and then I have Kyler Murray, and then I have that sort of pocket of Mahomes, Prescott, May, Nix. But they're all so close. Like, we're talking in that range. We're talking two and a bit points. So like you could literally throw a blanket over any of them. And that, so I'm not that far away from you. I thought I was a little bit further. I'm not. I think it's, but it is, I think at that level, it's such fine margins in terms of where a QB could be a QB 10 and a QB 14 could literally be 4 or 5 points. So I think people get too zeroed in on the actual finish as opposed to the points generated. And I think if I was, people go, I finished QB 12 last year. Yeah, but if you finish QB 12 by 0.02 points, does that really matter? Like that, it's how much he got there. So I think, again, with the price you get at Drake May, if you're saying you can draft a bottom end QB1, whether he finishes 10, 12, or 14, you're paying like QB 18 price on him.
Yes.
The value is there. And the value to what you're conceding in the points, even if it's like 2 or 3 points, is nothing to the value you get because you'll make those points up by who you draft above. And I think that's the case for Drake May over these other guys is, look, he's going at QB 18, but actually you're drafting a QB1 potential, and it's a pretty safe worst case high-end QB2 and don't worry about how far he's off that pace, because he's going to be in the mix with those guys who are going to go 4 rounds higher, and you might split hairs between them.
Agreed.
But
Very
that doesn't matter.
Cost effective.
And I think that's it. Yeah, you don't really mind losing 4 or 5 points to a quarterback. So over the course of a season, when you're paying a lot less for them. So I think that's a good point. Let's look at running backs then. Now, typically the strategies have been hero RB, zero RB, some sort of modical view of both of those, like a hybrid version of that, and then avoid the running back dead zone. Last year proved that the dead zone maybe was a thing, but it's not anymore. I look at the position now and think it's probably deeper than it's been as far back as I can remember, really, in the NFL. What are your initial thoughts on running back, and where your initial kind of thoughts are on that?
Yeah, that's my take too, Murph. Like there are not a lot of guys I consider to be red flag players for me at running back. Like there are guys I like at all sorts of different price points, and I feel pretty comfortable with, I don't know, the top 30 to 35 as possible picks. So I guess with running back, I always, and this, I can sort of blend wide receiver analysis in with this. Like I think the most important setting in any league is how many wide receivers you're required to start each week, whether it's 2 or 3. And if it's 3, I am always going to try to be strong at wide receiver, because, in a typical league where you've got 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, and a flex. Okay, so that is 6, 7, 8 spots, non-kicker, non-defense. And you can, you're starting 3 wide receivers, so 37.5% of your starting lineup is wide receivers. And if you flex a 4th wide receiver, 50% of your non-defense, non-kicker starting lineup spots are wide receivers.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get caught short at wide receiver in a 3 wide receiver league, Murph. Like I am going to hammer that position in the early rounds and probably be forced to cut corners a little bit at running back. Probably get 1 in the first 3 rounds and then fill in later in the draft. But if I only have to start 2 wide receivers, I'll start running back sometimes. And I would probably favor one of the big 4 running backs in the first round over a wide receiver in most cases, except for maybe Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
But, I would, in a start 2 wide receiver league, my number 1 player is Bijan Robinson.
Okay.
In a start 3 wide receiver league, my number 1 player is Jamar Chase. Like yeah. So I mean, that is just a huge difference in how I approach leagues. So, but yeah, that's it. I'm more aggressive with running backs if I only have to start 2 wide receivers. But most of the leagues I'm in are start 3 wide receiver leagues. So I'll sometimes cut corners and try to cover the position a little more cost effectively.
And I think at running back this year, you can do that. I look at the values at running back, and it seems to me that this dynasty view has entered redraft, that drafting a player over 28 at the running back position is just a no-no. And I love the discounts that you can get on players that are over 28 years old at the running back position, because this isn't dynasty, right? I don't need the guy to be hot 2 years from now. I just need 17 weeks out of him. And if he falls off, next year, then that's next year. Like it's not a dynasty. I have to worry about that problem. And I think that this mindset where people, this as dynasty has got so much more popular, it's actually bringing down value to the running back position. So these guys like Alvin Kamara, like Derrick Henry, are still at such a value to where they should be ranked, because of the fact that they're old. And people think the wheels have got to fall off this year. But I don't know. I just think you can get Alvin Kamara in the 5th, 6th round. I'm just like, We sat on this show 12 months ago and we called it out as such a large value. It's like, there's no one else there. And
Right.
this year, there's even less. They've got worse as an offense. Like, it's all going to be Alvin Kamara all the time. Like, there isn't anything there to be worried about. And that he's going in the 5th round. I just think we're fast forwarding a little bit, but just think we're being given as seasoned players such an advantage if you're willing to just take a risk and pick up some older players, because I think you are going to benefit from that, and that allows you to execute a wide receiver strong, roster construction, because you can get that value in the 4th, 5th, 6th round at running back, which you couldn't do a couple of years ago, I don't think.
Yes, and I'll expand on your Alvin Kamara thoughts a little later too.
Yeah,
because I think he's going to come up again.
Yeah, I'm dialed in. He's in every draft I take right now. He's just there, and I'm reaching for him because I don't want anyone else to have him. So I'm there. I think we're aligned. Harry's asked a question about you talked about start a 3 running back, 3 wide receiver, 3 flex. What would be your view to that?
I think that would be more akin to a start 2 wide receiver, 2 running back league, where I would maybe be a little more aggressive at running back than I would be at air.
Yeah.
Vance?
Yeah, I agree. I think when you start 3 running backs, if you think as well that think about a formation in an NFL game, each team is going to start a minimum of 2, if not 3 wide receivers. They're starting 1 running back. You might get shared backfield responsibility, but there's 32 A backs in the NFL. So if you play the 12-team league and it's 3 running back, that's 36.
Yeah,
you're already in your starting spot having to take a scat back as a starter if you're unfortunate. So I don't want to be one of those 4 teams that has to start a scat back. Give me 3 premium running backs, because our backfill at wide receiver, I'm just going to have to, or ignore the tight end position and then just think, well, tight end becomes worthless there.
Yeah.
With the amount of roster spots that you just have to ignore the tight end position and just float it, and you could even stream it and then just load up with as many wide receivers and running backs as you can get.
Agreed.
Because I don't want to scat back as my starting running back. I'm in one of those leagues that's that sort of format. And again, I aggressively hound running back. And it is dangerous because obviously they get injured. It's a volatile position. But you just got to pound it, I think. I don't think you got to... Here we go. 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 tight end, and 3 flex. I mean, that's just... Yeah, I think I'd still ignore the tight end position.
I play in 1-2 tight end league, and I've actually drafted pretty aggressively at tight end. And last year I lucked out and had 3 because I hit on Tucker Kraft pretty late.
Oh yeah, okay. Before we get into the ADPs, I'm going to skip wide receiver because I think wide receiver is deep. We know it's a pretty solid position. It's pretty steady. It's not sort of any drastics. You got separators at the top and then it goes flat in the middle. Let's go to tight ends then. We kind of have 2 tight ends that are the standouts in terms of where we expect to be from volume of targets in Brock Bowers, who set records last year, and Trey McBride. Then you got kind of George Kittle in the wings underneath that, and then you kind of got everyone else. What's your sort of take on the tight end position? Are you reaching up to get one of the top 2, or are you quite happy to sit and wait at the position?
I might reach up and get one of the top 2, but Trey McBride is not in my top 2, Murph.
Nice.
Okay. I have Kittle ranked ahead of Trey McBride.
So do I.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people like McBride, but so a lot of people are expecting a better second season from Marvin Harrison Jr. And if that happens, doesn't that necessarily mean sort of a reduction in targets and receptions for Trey McBride? And maybe we won't get that, but then I still have this issue with Trey McBride, and I know everyone thinks the touchdown spigot is going to open really soon for Trey McBride, but this guy has never scored touchdowns dating all the way back to college. I mean, in his final season at Colorado State, he had I want to say he had 1,000 yards receiving and didn't score his first touchdown until his final college game. He had 0 touchdowns going into his last game of his final season at Colorado State. even though he finished as 1,000-yard tight end. So
Yeah.
like this guy has never scored touchdowns. He just hasn't. And maybe like I certainly wouldn't be shocked if he had 8 touchdowns this year, but man, I'm betting the under if you're setting the line at 7.5.
Yeah,
I'm absolutely betting a lot of money on the under.
Yeah, I have him at 5, and I think like I'm being generous. My early projections I had him at 6, and then I kind of was looking at the way that I expect him to line up, and then I used a little bit of Warren Sharp's book that dropped this week, and I really study that from a schematics perspective. And I don't know Warren. I've never had Warren on this show, but I do say that his book is absolutely phenomenal, and I recommend it to anybody if you want to learn about how teams line up and their formations, and you get the idea of where they're going to distribute targets. I don't think there's a better resource out there than his book.
Yeah. I am sort of interested in Bowers though. Murph.
Yeah, I'm massively interested in Bowers. I think Bowers is for me, he's light years ahead of everybody else.
Yes.
I think I've got him about 25 points clear off the field.
I think you can make a case for him being worth taking at the end of the first round, quite honestly. Especially with, now he was the best tight end prospect ever. He comes in at age 21 and has a monster season, and he did that with one of the worst quarterback situations in the league. Now they have a guy who threw for 4,300 yards last year in Geno Smith at quarterback. Yeah. They've got Chip Kelly, who always pushes the pace. Pushing the pace means more plays per game, just like a marginal value increase for Bowers. Like, I think he's just getting started, and it would not surprise me if he was knocking on the door of 1,500 yards this year.
And other than Jinty, they haven't really added much to that offense,
right?
So
a receiver. Like Jack Bash is a nice player, but Jack Bash is not going to threaten Brock Bowers' target load in any way.
No, I agree. All right, let's get into some ADPs here. So we're going to use FantasyPros as ADPs. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Make sure we got a good view of it here. So we're going to focus just on PPR scoring because that's what most people are playing right now. Eventually, you'd flip it back to maybe the half-point PPR, but I kind of feel that the PPR ADP is feeling a little bit more accurate to what I'm seeing in drafts because that seems to be what most people are playing. We're going to go through round by round. We'll do the first few rounds, 7 or 8 rounds, depending on time. So, top 12 players. Is there anything here that kind of stands out? Is there a player that you absolutely sort of love at ADP here and a player that you're fading at all costs in round 1 on price here?
There's no one whose price offends me in the first round, Murph. The one guy I'm maybe sort of drafting around in the first round is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think that might surprise some people to hear that because he's become such a trusted brand name. After all, he's been wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 3 in PPR scoring the last 2 years. But here's the thing. Amon-Ra's fantasy scoring was slightly down last year. He went from 20.7 PPR fantasy points per game in 2023 to 18.6 last year. So he's down 2.1 points. Still high level production, obviously, but for Amon-Ra to get within 2.1 fantasy points per game of where he had been in 2023 required him to score a career high 12 touchdowns and have a catch rate of 81.6%, which was about 9 percentage points higher than he had been the last 2 years before that. So it was because his targets fell off. He went from 10.3 targets a game in 2023 to 8.3 last year. And I think it can very easily be traced to the emergence of Jameson Williams, pretty obvious reason why the targets dropped off. And JMO looks to be here to stay. So I don't think Amon-Ra gets back to 10 targets a game. I also don't think Jared Goff is going to complete a 6.9% touchdown rate, by far the highest of his career.
Yep.
And I also have these concerns about the Detroit offense just not functioning quite as crisply overall without Ben Johnson as the play caller.
I can get on board with about 2/3 of that. And then
Okay.
there's a part where I'm going to pivot and explain why I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is okay. So I agree with you. I think they're going to run less plays. I don't think it's going to be as crisp or as smooth. I think the touchdown rate will go down. They'll be less efficient. So I think Goff will get less touchdowns. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown will get less touchdowns. I think the catch rate will go down. There's no world in which I expect any of those things to not happen. Where I think Amon-Ra St. Brown will get boosted up is by an increase of targets. So I actually think he will see more than 10. I think he will see an average of 10 targets a game, because the Ben Johnson scheme requires sort of tight ends and it leaned heavily on Laporta. I actually think they're going to lean a lot less on Laporta. And I think Laporta's in danger of having one of those years where he goes into effectively the tight end abyss, where he just sort of sits in and becomes just another tight end. Because I think Jared Goff is going to struggle a little bit with the transition. He's never had that much change in his career. He's gone from, Sean McVay and his offense to the Ben Johnson offense. And this is his third change in, 8-9 years now that he's been a quarterback. That's pretty rare to have that little change in that time. So I think he will struggle, and I think he'll go back to what he knows. What he knows is Amon-Ra St. Brown is an extraordinary football player who he can depend to get out of in a situation. He's the guy that's going to get him out. Almost similar to the Mike Evans effect in Tampa, that if you're in trouble, just go and throw Mike Evans the ball. He'll make plays, and he will get you out of trouble. And I think that's where that reliance will be on St. Brown to get them out of trouble when they're struggling. Because I do think it will be a struggle for them this year. So I just think it will be Laporta that will get really hammered. And I think Williams is sort of here to stay. I think he'll get a dink in production. I actually have the rest of the Detroit Lions offense going south all across the board. And I actually think Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of becomes safe because of the target volume he'll get on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, his floor is pretty safe, and it is not going to crush anyone's fantasy dreams if you draft Amon-Ra at 109 and he finishes as the wide receiver 11. As a second round value, basically. So but I do kind of think he's going to be more of a second round value than a first round value.
Yeah. I mean, he's on the fringes there. He is continuing to fall. Whenever I look at these, I'm probably more comfortable taking him over a couple of names on this list. Nico Collins is one that I'm perhaps just a little bit more. I'm not saying Nico Collins is going to kill your season. I don't think any of these players in the top 12 kill your season, but I think I'd rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown over Nico Collins. I would probably as well go Amon-Ra St. Brown over Puka Nacua. I just think the Devontae Adams effect is going to be significant. And again, I still think Puka Nacua probably finishes as a top 12 wide receiver. I don't see a world in which he doesn't, but I just think that Devontae Adams is going to dink him maybe from that elite performance that perhaps we're kind of used to. So I don't think I've got any qualms on the top four, though I don't have Bijan above Saquon. What do you think about Christian McCaffrey this year?
Man, I can't do it in the first round. Okay. I just, there have been just too many seasons where you are getting like almost nothing out of him. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has played, let's see, what is it? 7 or fewer games in, sorry, I have to look this up, Murph.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, it's, over the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, he's given us fewer than 8 games in 4 of the 7 years. Mm. That's too big a risk for me to consider in the first round. And I know the upside is positively huge, but I guess I view it this way, Murph. In leagues where I'm drafting with a lot of really smart people, some analyst leagues where I have just immense respect for everyone I'm going against. And I know I'm not the shark of the league. I'm more willing to take a chance on McCaffrey in a league like that, where I might, need the good fortune of a healthy McCaffrey season and what that brings, which is probably going to be close to 2,000 total yards. But if I'm in a league where one of my home leagues where I know there's a lot of dead money in that league, like I'm not going to take a chance on Christian McCaffrey and an injury. Like I don't want my first or second round pick to blow up and not provide anything for me all season. So in a league like that, I'm not taking McCaffrey, but in a league where I'm swimming with a lot of sharks, I might take a chance on McCaffrey.
I love that. And I think you're absolutely right. I think in most charity leagues and those big formats like the Scottish Bowl and other leagues, I think the risk to reward a Christian McCaffrey where you're trying to win a tournament with 300, 600, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 people, why not? Like, why not? If you're going to play to win, go shove all in with Christian McCaffrey and roll the dice, because you don't get anything being conservative in those leagues. But I agree, in your home league, it is more prudent. But I do like that value you're getting him at the back end of the first round, because I feel if things do fall off the wall and it goes wrong, you're immediately picking somebody up of equal value just a couple of picks later, and it kind of can set you right. Whereas I think if you were taking him at the top to the middle and you had to wait for the big swing back, that efficiency drop is a killer. So yeah, I can see that. Dan's asked the question, in half point PPR, would you rather have Gibbs getting 60% of the work or GT getting 90% of the work? I was going to ask you about GT here at pick 11. Are you comfortable taking him in the first round here?
I am. I feel like he's a pretty generational prospect. I feel like he's on par with where Bijan was as a prospect a few years ago. So, and I totally get what Daniel was getting at with that question. I currently have Gibbs ranked third among running backs and Genty fourth, but I've second guessed that one for sure. Like Daniel's found a pressure point in my rankings. I guess I'm maybe biased by the fact that I was in one of my home leagues last year. I had Jahmyr Gibbs, and I wound up winning the championship in that league, and Gibbs was just incredible in the playoff push and the playoffs for me. I mean, he just went on an absolute tear. And granted, I think there was no Montgomery for most of those games, but yeah, I mean, I just think he's phenomenal. I wouldn't be surprised if they turn down the dials on Montgomery a little bit, just because they know, you have to know that Gibbs is one of the 3 or 4 most talented running backs in the league. But that said, I fully buy into Genty. I do think he is an extraordinary talent. Yes, he does. Yes, he does, Daniel.
I am probably the lowest ranked of GT of anyone in the consensus. I have him at 11. So you made the comp to Bijan there. I think that's fair. I'm not even going to argue the toss. I think that's fair. Bijan finished as RB9 in his rookie year. You know, even Saquon in his rookie year finished around a similar range. You know, rookie running backs very, very rarely finish in the top 4, top 5 of fantasy football because they land on a poor offense. Yes, Chip Kelly's coming in. Yes, they've got Geno Smith. And yes, there's not a lot of competition behind him. They do have Raheem Mostert. It wouldn't surprise me that Raheem Mostert got some of that ugly muck between the 20s. I don't think he's going to get any of the exciting work. I don't think he's going to get in GT's way in terms of scoring touchdowns or anything like that. But I do think he's going to dink him into, which I don't think is a bad thing because it will keep GT fresh. But I do think he's going to get some of that sort of work. I don't think GT's going to get 90% of the work. I just don't. I just think you've got Raheem Mostert. He's a steady pair of hands. I'm not saying that GT's going to get 60% of the work either. I think he probably ends up somewhere in the middle, about 75%, 80% is kind of where I see GT getting it, which is huge in a running back workload. But I think this idea that Raheem Mostert's just turned up there to just earn a contract and do nothing is not the case. And I think the plan was always to try and bring the two in together. Next year, all bets are off. If GT hits the ground running this year, he could break into the top 5. Yeah. But I'm just a little bit more conservative on GT this year. But that's me as a ranker, right? I'm always conservative on a rookie because I have to look at past performance and I have to see it happen before I can go. It's going to happen.
I get it. The secret sauce and the path that I think Genty has to potentially being a top 3 running back as a rookie is just like his contact balance. Murph is like I don't know how many running backs in the NFL I've watched with that sort of contact balance. Like you have to hit this guy with a sledgehammer to get him off his feet. I mean, it's just amazing. And I don't know how he does it. His center of balance is just, he is very hard to knock over.
He really is. It's definitely going to be a fun watch. But for me, when I look at players I hate in round 1, Ashton Genty is it, because I think you're buying him at his ceiling. And I don't like drafting players at their absolute ceiling unless they're Jamar Chase and they're the 101 and
fair.
There's nowhere else to go. That's just how I am as a player. Right, we go to round 2. Quite running back heavy this. We see our first tight end here in Bowers. I think we've touched upon him. I think, 19 feels pretty good on Brock Bowers. I think anyone would be quite happy to punch the ticket there. So I don't think he needs much discussion here. But let's talk about the fact there's no quarterback here at all, which I find surprising and I don't think is going to hold up. Who here would you sort of love and hate at this ADP?
Yeah, I mean, Bowers was my choice for the love. And, I like the second round this year a lot more than I did last year.
100%.
The second round was very problematic last year. And, we saw Marvin Harrison Jr. getting pushed into the second round. And I thought that was gross, but I still had him ranked as a second rounder just because there were few viable alternatives. I guess the one thing, and I don't hate him. I think he's a wonderful player, but you just talked about drafting people at their ceilings. And I think that's kind of the case with Ladd McConkey.
Yeah.
And I know the last we saw of him, he was having that 197-yard game against the Texans where they just could not cover him. And that is fresh in people's mind. But the thing is, Murph, like Ladd had 112 targets last year in 16 games. He ranked 26th in the league in targets. And granted, there was a little bit of an uptick for him later in the season. He averaged 6.5 targets over his first 8 games, 7.5 over his last 8. But even if he gets to 7.5 targets every game, that works out to 128 targets, which would have ranked 19th last year. And Ladd is already at peak efficiency, 2.59 yards per route run and 10.3 yards per target last year. Like, you just can't do better than that. I just think the Chargers are going to run the crap out of the ball this year. I mean, they signed Najee Harris. They drafted Omarion Hampton. They were already 10th highest in run rate last year, I think, or in number of percentage of plays being running plays. I think they're going to be top 5 this year. And they brought in Trey Harris, so they've got a more viable X receiver now than Quentin Johnston. I don't see where Ladd McConkey's target share grows and his efficiency is already maxed out.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's a wide receiver 2 in wide receiver 1 clothing. So I'm completely with you. I think he's a very safe player. And if we were talking about the 4th round, I'd be punching the ticket there and pounding the table. But I think he's 2 rounds overranked, maybe a round and a half. I'm with you. I couldn't disagree there in the slightest. I want to talk about one of our favorite players, mutual favorite players, who I think is very generously ranked here in Jonathan Taylor. Now, he's at RB8. He's picked 20. I absolutely love the value here on Jonathan Taylor because I think Jonathan Taylor has got a top 3 year in him still. And I think with Daniel Jones going to the Colts, and I think with Shane Steichen finally going to get that offense warmed up with a bit more certainty at the quarterback position, I see a world that if Jonathan Taylor stays relatively healthy, because I don't think he was 100% healthy last year, we could see a top 3 season out of him this year.
One of the best pure runners in the NFL, without question. We know that running quarterbacks tend to spike the efficiency of their running backs because they pose a threat themselves. And especially if a team does RPOs, like you figure the Colts should do with Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, freezes linebackers for an extra second, maybe makes those holes a little bigger for the running backs. Like the only concerns are that the ankle problems have now become maybe gotten to the point where we could call it a chronic issue, Murph, and just like isn't a lot of pass catching upside, which is going to ding him a little bit in PPR. But if he stays relatively healthy, a 1,600-yard rushing season, 1,700-yard season, not out of the question at all. Like he is a phenomenal runner.
And I just think on that, I think, people are talking about his catching value. So like I actually do have him at RB3, right? I'm at 1,500 yards, 13 rushing touchdowns, because I think a lot of it's going to go away. I don't have Anthony Richardson as the lead quarterback in this offense. I have Daniel Jones. I do only have him catching 28 passes and 219 receiving yards, just the one receiving touchdown. But I have him running the ball 321 times, which that's the part where I have him aggressively ranked. But I think if he does that, I think he's a top 3 running back this year.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, a healthy Jonathan Taylor does average about 20 carries a game.
Yeah, and I think that is in his wheelhouse of outcomes. And so I love taking Jonathan Taylor at this range here, especially over the alternatives. And, like I love Derrick Henry as well. I have him just behind him in my rankings. So I'm comfortable with Henry, and he's a lot safer, and you feel a lot more comfortable there. But I give me Jonathan Taylor over Achane, giving him over, Bucky Irving, and I love Bucky Irving. Like I just love the value you get at Taylor here. The player who I hate at ADP, and that was similar on Lamb McConkey, but as a player I hope worse, and it's Rashee Rice. I think you're drafting Rashee Rice is absolute. You see, if AJT caught another 50-30 passes, yeah, I mean that is the downside of him. I think Rashee Rice, I don't even have him in my top 24 wide receivers this year. I just think we will see a world where I get what you're saying on the passing offense of the Chiefs, and that volume could spike a bit. I actually think this is the most talented receiver core that the Chiefs have had probably since the 2020 season. Yeah. And then I think that's actually a problem, because I don't expect the efficiency to double. And I think it would need to sustain both Worthy and Rice. And I actually think they all become a byproduct of their own success. So I think you've got this world where Xavier Worthy will get a significant amount of targets. Travis Kelce will get a significant amount of targets, although less than previous years. I think Rashee Rice will get a significant amount of targets, but I don't think any of them becomes the elite. I think they all become a much of a muchness, and they'll all produce very nice fantasy numbers, and they'll all have spike weeks. And in best ball, this would be a different conversation. I would be all over Worthy or Rice in a best ball tournament. But in a redraft, I'm just not prepared to risk a player who can score 7 or 20. And I think Rashee Rice's production is going to be so over the map, depending on how they play and where the offensive fluidity goes.
Murph, over Xavier Worthy's last 8 games, if you exclude week 18 when he played 1 snap because they were sitting the starters, over his last 8 games, including playoffs, Worthy had 50 catches. Yeah. That's a 100 catch pace over a full season. And I know he was sort of playing that Rashee Rice role, but even though Rice is back, Worthy is not disappearing. It's not he's going to be Marquez Valdez-Scantling out there just running wind sprints on every play. Like, he is going to earn targets. He is 100%. Good. And we're also making a pretty huge leap of faith if we assume that Rashee Rice is going to be 100% after a torn LCL and PCL.
100%, yeah. There's that some figures.
So I'm with you, Murph, and yet, like, there is a strong, there's a Rashee Rice cult out there.
There really is, and it is quite funny to watch. I can't get there on him at all. And again, it's nothing on the player. It's just the situation he's in. But that's where we are. Round 3. This is a very interesting round for me because I am all over the map here with some of these players. Like,
Yeah.
there's some I love and some, like, for me, this is the ultimate love-hate. There isn't anyone in here that I go, yeah, that's about right. I either feel like it's a value or it's a travesty. Maybe Josh Allen here at 33 is about the only one I go, yeah, that's probably about right. Everyone else, I'm kind of like, no, that's brilliant, or no, that's awful.
Yeah. I mean, my hate is probably McBride, and I gave people that spiel, but like 25 overall, I think is just outrageous. And I like Chase Brown at 30. And I know he's not going to get like 90% of the touches the way he was getting late last season, although his touch competition right now is Zach Moss, Samaje Perine, and like 6th round or 7th round rookie pick Taj Brooks, who I like a lot, but he is a 6th round pick. So this is an offense that's going to score a lot of points. And Chase Brown was good as a runner and as a receiver last year. And if you're going to give him to me in the 3rd round, I'm probably going to take him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate it. I'm probably a little lower on him. I just think that they have a propensity to abandon the run, and I do worry about that defense.
Yes,
that they might get behind and then just have to throw the football. So I only have Chase Brown running the ball 201 times.
Yeah, reasonable. They are going to be in a lot of shootouts this year.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch, but I do question that if they just are down 14 points and they just have to shoot out, then that's great for Chase, and it's great for Higgins, and it's great for Burrow, which is why I have all of those quite nicely ranked. I think Chase Brown will do fine in the receiving game, but yeah, that's my worry with him, is I don't see the pathway to RB11 there for him, because I just think, and it's not his fault, it's just the defense he's on is so bad. That's about to get a lot worse as well with players sitting out. I love Jackson here. I think it's a great value.
Yes.
He strikes out. I even love Tyreek Hill, and I know there's the madness of it, and he might not play, and it's really bad, and I know he's bad at the end of last season, and it's a circus, and I don't need telling any of that, but you've got a guy here who is a proven fantasy diamond, who you're getting a 1st round wide receiver on his day at a 3rd round price. There's something attractive about that. You have to buy into the chaos. I think his price is going to dip a little lower too, which would excite me more. It wouldn't necessarily tempt me into it. I love McLaurin here at 19. I think that is a real value in drafts. Give me as many pieces of this Washington offense as possible. It seems to me that we're really high on Jaden Daniels as the QB4, but we're down on all the other pieces of the offense. That seems a bit wild to me. Give me as many pieces of this offense as possible. I think it's going to be fun. I like his price. But I think probably the player I love most here is Kyren Williams. Always discounted by the fantasy community and fantasy players as a player who just is going to get replaced every year and chipped out every year. Everyone was like, Blake Corum's going to come in and Blake Corum's going to take his job. And I was like, no, because Blake Corum is exactly the same as Kyren Williams. They took the same running back, and they took the exact same athletic profile, the exact same style of running back in case Kyren gets injured. We said this 12 months ago. That's what happened. I'm not worried about Hunter coming in either. I think they're in similar boats. I think Kyren Williams is going to be run. He stayed healthy last year. His workload last year was insane.
Yeah,
he was like number 1 or 2 in touches last year, and I don't think that's sustainable. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here projecting him to have another RB5, RB6 season, but I just think he's better than I think he's on pace to be an RB1 this year, and I think you're getting an RB2 price on an RB1 player.
I know the efficiency wasn't great. I know they keep adding running backs behind him, but mean, that's kind of been a Les Snead thing with the Rams to draft the running back every year. So I don't know if we should be that worried about it, but at the end of the third round, I agree. Like, he's just a great value there, and there's no way he should be behind Breece Hall when Breece Hall's coach is openly talking about wanting to have a running back by committee.
100%. I just think it's madness. Like, for me, he shouldn't be behind Breece Hall. And yeah, he shouldn't be behind Jacobs either. Like, I've got nothing against Josh Jacobs. He's a very fine running back. He will do a job reasonably well. But he's a 7 out of 10 player. He'll be a mid-range RB2. Like, I don't love the price on him. The only reason I love the price on Josh Jacobs is we know he doesn't really get hurt. He sticks around the whole season. We know he's durable, probably more than most running backs. And you're kind of buying that durability, and that's what you're paying a bit of a premium on. And I don't hate it, but I would always take this. He's never going to be Josh Jacobs, a top 5 running back. There's no ceiling to his play. It's just
we got the ceiling last year pretty much with the high touchdown count.
Yeah, and that's going to go down this year. So round 4, this is an interesting round for me. We've got Jane Daniels now peering up at QB3 above Jalen Hurts. So this has moved since I last looked at this. What are your initial thoughts here? Second Kansas City wide receiver here. Jameson Williams is here. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
My favorite is maybe Kenneth Walker. And by the way, when I wrote this down, Murph, I was looking at half point PPR. So is Kenneth Walker in this range or no?
No, I think he's not in this range. He's the next round.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to.
You got an even better value on him.
Yeah. So, man, who do I really like in this range? I mean, this is a pretty good range to get Jaden Daniels. I would say I really do like George Kittle, especially. There's no more Deebo Samuel. It's kind of a slightly murky wide receiver situation for the 49ers. Like, I think
it's out half a season.
Yeah, so. And like Kittle is just.
He's a monster.
He's so good and so high efficiency every year. So he is probably my favorite. Least favorite, I just want to make sure. I think James Cook in this round? He is in this round.
Yeah.
So Murph, he had 9 touchdowns over his first 2 NFL seasons, and then he doubled that in 1 year last year. We know he's not going to score that many touchdowns. His pass catching upside is kind of capped. I mean, I know he's at a 38 catch season, but like, I don't know if he can go any higher than 40 because Josh Daniels does not dump off. He just doesn't throw to his backs that much. The one game that he missed last year, James Cook, because of turf toe, Ray Davis came in and had 150 plus yards from scrimmage against the Jets and looked sensational. And I think Ray Davis is really good.
Yeah.
And we've also got this contract impasse with James Cook. So I'm kind of drafting around James Cook. I think he's a good player. I just don't want any part of him this early in a draft.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm similar to you. I absolutely love Kittle here. I love DJ Moore here. I feel he's a great value. I get on board with the quarterbacks too. I love Amarian Hampton here. I love what he could become in that offense. I think he'll push Ginty pretty close as a rookie. I think Ginty's the better running back overall, but I love the situation that Hampton is in, and I think that makes it a really attractive push point here. If you've gone wide receiver, and you're chasing the running back position, and I'm looking at the running backs in this particular range, in this round, I'm pumping for Amarian Hampton over James Cook. It's not even close. Like chalk and cheese. Give me the guy who could blow the doors off and have a great season. He might not, but give me the ride at pick 48. I feel like this is a good time to try and gamble and see what the range of outcome is on him. The players, and the other one I love here is Mike Evans. Mike Evans is wide receiver 20. He's never finished below wide receiver 18 in his career.
Yeah. When my friend Scott Pianowski of Yahoo always likes to ask, when has anyone ever drafted Mike Evans and been disappointed?
Exactly that. You can write it in pen, 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That's what you're going to get.
Yep.
It's what you're going to get as a minimum. And then everything else you get is cake.
Yeah.
Like, you're drafting him at wide receiver 20. I'd take him as a wide receiver 2 all day long. I just think it's safe money. You never go wrong drafting Mike Evans, as you say.
I do have a fade in this Buccaneers wide receiver core, and it's not Mike Evans, put it that way.
No, but that's fair. The player I hate at this range is Ted McMillan.
It's a little high.
It's really high. For a Dave Canellis basic, simple offense and a Bryce Young quarterback who, let's face it, has been a disappointment in the NFL. Yes, there's signs. Yes, he could improve. And the argument is, oh, well, he's so much better than everybody else in the room that he's going to get all the targets. I present to you Marvin Harrison Jr. of 2024 Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
Because I look at those situations, and other than the fact that the quarterback is worse at Carolina, I view that situation as almost identical.
Yeah. I like
running back.
Yep. And I like McMillan as a prospect, but this is
so do I. It's not
very aggressive ranking.
Really aggressive. I don't think you're ever going to get your return there on him. I think that is very questionable. Right, we get to the 49 through 60, and there is some running backs in this range that look absolutely eye-watering. You're about to talk about Kenneth Walker. Alvin Kamara is also here. Maybe we share the floor and talk about those two players in this range. Sure.
Well, Kamara, you had mentioned, Murph, and I know he's not the high-efficiency runner he used to be. He's not.
Yeah.
This is a guy who averaged 6.1 yards per carry his rookie year. He's been closer to 4 in recent years, hasn't had more than 6 touchdown runs in any of the last 4 seasons, but he has remained a prolific pass catcher. And I do not think that's going to change. I mean, he's got these young quarterbacks, Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler. And
it's not going to be Spencer Rattler. Spoiler alert. It's going to be Tyler Shuck.
Agreed. I agree with that. And, but like Tyler Shuck is going to be confused by a lot of what he sees.
A lot.
It's going to be so easy for him to just dump the ball off to Alvin Kamara. Like I could see Kamara going back to those days when he was good for 81 receptions each of his first 3 years. He was at 68 last year, 75 the year before. I think he could get back to 80, quite honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I have him reasonably conservative at 65 receptions and only 2 receiving touchdowns. But I have him with 7 touchdowns on the ground. I have him comfortably in my top 12. And then the other, I just think that offense is dire. As you say, Tyler Shuck is going to be the quarterback. I actually went on a British college podcast and broke down the quarterbacks and talked about the fact that Tyler Shuck was pretty much his hand tailored towards the offensive scheme that they're going to run there under Kellen Moore. Like you looked at all the quarterbacks in the draft, and Tyler Shuck fits the closest of anyone there. Now, I'm not saying he's the most talented. I'm just saying that fit-wise and scheme-wise, that was like the best fit of any quarterback, offensive coordinator, head coach scheme you could marry across. The problem with Tyler Shuck is his injuries, and yeah, he actually hasn't played that much despite the fact he was pensioned off from college after being there 7 years. So I do think it's interesting, but I do think it's not Spencer Rattler. Anyone that's holding a candle to Spencer Rattler can extinguish that now and put it towards good use elsewhere, because it's not going to happen. So with Tyler Shuck, you're going to struggle. That wide receiver room is abysmal. I mean, you got Chris Olave. As long as he holds up, then great, but the concussions are an issue. You got Brandon Cooks, who is on his last dance in the NFL. Juwan Johnson is injury prone. Yes, you got Taysom is still knocking around. I mean, that offense is very poor. There is not much of a running threat behind him. I just think Alvin Kamara is gonna eat. And he proved last year he's just as durable as ever.
Yes.
Missed the first couple of games with that suspension. But he still finished as the RB9 with a 3-game suspension.
Yes.
I mean, he would have been an RB4.
Right.
So I just think nothing's changed. It just gets better for him. So I'm with you on and Kenneth Walker. Let's talk about Kenneth Walker, because I think he's an extreme value here as well.
Oh, he's going to fit the scheme so perfectly.
Oh,
This Clint Kubiak is heavy on outside zone. I know Ryan Heath of Fantasy Points wrote an article where he pointed out that Kenneth Walker's averaged like 4.5 or 4.54 yards per carry on outside zone runs, which is like a 13% boost over what he's averaged on all other runs. And just in general, this Kubiak and Rick Dennison is going to be the run game coordinator. And Rick Dennison used to coach with Clint's dad, Gary Kubiak, back in Denver in like the 1990s and 2000s. And when they were together back then, like that was Terrell Davis, that was Clinton Portis. And then that was also like a bunch of nobodies who had these big years, guys like Reuben Drones, Mike Anderson, Tatum Bell. Those guys had huge seasons in this system. This is a running game bonanza, and Kenneth Walker is going to be the beneficiary.
I'm so glad you said that.
And they draft Gray Zabel, who is great at getting out and getting to the next level. Like another perfect player for this system. So I like if Kenneth Walker can stay healthy, and that is kind of an if. I'm not a big handcuffer of running backs, Murph, but like Zach Charbonnet might be an exception for me this year if I do draft Kenneth Walker. But man, I think Seattle is going to have a lot of success on the ground this year.
I'm so with you. I have Ken Walker at 12. I feel good about him at 12. I have him splitting the two rookies. So it's Gene T, Walker, Hampton. I feel good about where I've got him. I feel like his projection that I have for him, I don't even have him going for 1,000 yards, just a dip under. I think is safe, and I feel good about where I've got him. So I love the value on him. I love the value on Kamara. I love the value on players like Waddle with the like wide receiver 30 feels great. Zay Flowers at 29 feels good. I even love I just love this whole round. The only player in this whole round who I sort of hate is George Pickens at 28. And I wonder if this is his holdover from Pittsburgh and the ADP hasn't caught up, because I can't see a world where he's finishing wide receiver 28 in Dallas.
I guess the case you can make is that Dallas is probably going to be, it's a better passing game environment than Pittsburgh was. And maybe he benefits from the presence of CeeDee Lamb and gets, some slightly easier matchups and a little less defensive attention. Like he is great at contested catches, but like he's also not great at earning a lot of targets. So I can kind of see. I don't hate it quite as much as I hate Juwan Jennings, Murph.
Okay.
Like we got sort of this weird mid-career age 27 breakout that was largely fueled by the absence of Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall earlier in the year, who was recovering from that gunshot wound. And it's not as if it was like a massive eruption for Jennings. It was a couple pretty good games. He was tied for wide receiver 26 in, that was half point PPR, but, and he averaged 2.26 yards per outrun last year, which was really good. But before that, he had never averaged better than 1.38 yards per outrun, which is pretty terrible. And that had been his best number to that point. So now, I don't see him earning a lot of targets with Pearsall, Kittle, McCaffrey, and eventually Ayuk around. I think this is way too early for Juwan Jennings. I wouldn't even consider him anywhere close to this.
Yeah, I don't hate that take. I'm with you. I think it is a little high, but then I look at wide receiver 33. I'm kind of in this state of I probably wouldn't do this because it was the 5th round anyway, but I kind of see this world where he could produce that sort of lightning in the bottle for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. No Ayuk. They're trying to get McCaffrey back up to speed. Pearsall's not really established in the NFL as a wide receiver yet. I just kind of think in the absence of all stability, Juwan Jennings could be like in a vacuum for 4 or 5 weeks, putting up those numbers he put up early in the season last year, which he had like 2 top 12 fantasy finishes. And I think If that's what you're buying and you know what you're getting, then I'm comfortable with it because I think that is what you're going to get. And then I think you're going to have 12 weeks of or 10 weeks of very little production. So if you're buying the spike weeks, then I'm like, okay, it's a tall premium. But if you want to get off to a flyer in your league and you want to dance, I don't hate it versus the stability of the players behind you. But you're going to need to have a plan B. So it's not how I would do it, but I also, in the hyper aggressive world of I'm chasing 4-week production, I get it, and I see that side of the path, which I think is what's driving his ADP. And maybe people think that Ayuk's going to be out longer than half the season, and then with the trade stuff and all this other stuff going around, like maybe he doesn't play. And in that world, then he becomes not quite a value, but a fit at 60. But yeah, I think that's the only spin I can put on it as a reasonable. We're getting to the end now. We're not going to do the rest of the rounds. I just had a quick question for you then in terms of the remaining players post 60. Who would you say were players that you're targeting in the mid to late rounds that you love and players that you're absolutely avoiding at all costs?
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Jeudy is one I like a lot, Murph, and I find it kind of egregious that he's ranked behind Juwan Jennings. I just like I totally buy into what Jeudy did last year, and I know the quarterback situation is very odd in Cleveland, but probably some of those games are going to be quarterbacked by Joe Flacco, and that's
I think most of them are.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
quite possible. I mean, they are motivated to give an audition to Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders to know where they stand at quarterback going into next year when they're going to have 2 first-round picks in a really good class for quarterbacks. So they have to find out what they have with those 2 guys and give both of them a little trial run. But yes, I do think Flacco is going to start a lot of games, and that will be great for Jeudy. And he's a really good route runner. He's great after the catch. I don't know if he's going to have another 1,200-yard season, but I could definitely see him getting to 1,000 again, and you're getting him pretty late. I'll give you 2 more I like and 2 more I dislike. I kind of like Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Deepak Chona, an injury expert who does some work for FantasyPros. He thinks it's about a 2/3 chance that Diggs is ready to go in week 1 and thinks Diggs should be about 90% of full capacity after about a month. And I just wonder if he might not be able to do for Drake May what he did for Josh Allen, because that first year Diggs got to Buffalo was the breakout season for Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And, and I know Diggs is an older receiver now, but coming into this season, he had going into last season before he only played 8 games or whatever. How many straight 1,000-yard seasons? How many straight 100 catch seasons? I mean, he had just been consistently excellent. So I am taking the injury discount on him. Let's see. And one more. I like Jordan Mason a lot. Another guy who's going into an outside zone run scheme that should fit him perfectly. Minnesota's upgraded their offensive line, and I just trust Kevin O'Connell. Pretty much everything he does turns to gold in that offense. And, he's playing with Aaron Jones, who has had some injury issues in the past and is in his 30s now. So, and then 2 guys I'm steering away. Like, I don't see the point to, even though he is a Viking and I just said everything, Kevin O'Connell touches turns to gold. I'm not going to extend that to TJ Hawkinson, Murph. I just don't know where the targets come from.
No, that's fair.
And he's going tight end 5. So no, thank you there. And Josh Downs, I know a lot of people love him, and I do think he's a good player, but I think he's scored like 7 touchdowns in 31 career games. He is absolutely going to lose some targets to Tyler Warren, the rookie tight end, because Tyler Warren is also going to catch targets somewhat near the line of scrimmage. That's Josh Downs' area. And like Warren is, I mean, he is very George Kittle-like. Yeah. He's a hard man to tackle. Like, get the ball in his hands, and like he looks to dish out punishment. Plus, Michael Pittman was playing last year with a broken back. And
There you go.
yeah, and we don't like the quarterback situation. I don't see a path to Josh Downs being like the sort of player you're excited to start in fantasy in any given week.
No, but you have segued me nicely to how much I love Michael Pittman at 91 at wide receiver 50.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
scooping
Oh
that
my
up
gosh.
absolutely everywhere. Like, this is the guy who's paid a huge contract. He's the bona fide number one. As you say, last year he played with pretty much a broken back. He still finished above wide receiver 50 last season. And he's only going to come back healthy and fitter. I think he's going to play with a better quarterback. Controversial take that I think that Daniel Jones is an okay quarterback. I'm not saying he's incredible, but he's better than anyone he's had over the last couple of years. And, you got to think that Michael Pittman has been, a wide receiver 2 with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, with Joe Flacco at quarterback, where there's been real struggles at the quarterback position in Indianapolis. Michael Pittman has been pretty safe until last season with that broken back. He still finished at like wide receiver 40 even then. So I love him at 50. I think you're buying a wide receiver 2 at wide receiver 5 price.
Yeah, the discount is insane. I agree.
It's nuts. So I'm in on that. I'm in on Cooper Kupp for a very similar reason. Again, I know his injury history. I know he's old, but with that scheme, I think he's a perfect fit for that scheme. I think volume-wise, he's going to project well out, well above wide receiver 49 there for you. I think there's some really good values in this range. I'm with you all the time. I love Baker Mayfield here. If you're going to miss at quarterback 7, feels like a very, very good price to take your quarterback there and get someone who has the potential to climb up. You're talking about Patrick Mahomes in this range as well. I think there's some good players here. The players I'm sort of avoiding and I hate, like Jade Reed at this range feels high. DeAndre Swift at this range feels very high. These are players I'm definitely not going to be in on. Trayvon Henderson, I think he's in a split role. I think he comes all right, but I think that's a premium you're paying for him there. RJ Harvey's the one I probably hate the most. The fact they went out and got J.K. Dobbins after drafting him doesn't make me feel good about life. Drafting RJ Harvey as an RB20.
Yeah, that does seem a little high. I liked him more when he was sort of in. Yeah,
Closer to
I
30.
agree with you and Rob. Yeah, give him to me at maybe RB26, and
Yeah.
I can get on board with that. But RB20 is pretty aggressive.
Absolutely. And I think there's some good late round values here if you're sort of chasing these late rounds. Travis Etienne at RB33, he's going to start the season as a starter. How much you get out of the whole season remains to be seen, but I think he's going to start your season, and I think he's going to get you through the bye weeks as a starter, and I think he's going to put up top 20 numbers as the RB in that time, and then you can always pivot later on with a streamer or a player you pick up off waivers who gets injured. I love Rashid Shaheed here at wide receiver 54. You don't have anyone else out there in New Orleans. They're going to just have to chuck the ball long, and just what Rashid does best. Yeah, he's going to have a couple of poor weeks, but he's going to have those spike weeks that could be league-winning weeks or match-winning weeks with wide receiver 1, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 6 performances. Even MVS, when he deputized in that role, had a wide receiver 2 and a wide receiver 9 week last season. So I love those kind of roles. As you said, Jake May down here is a good spot, and I love David Njoku here. I think paired back with Joe Flacco. Those two shared some success in the past, and I think that's going to be wheels up for him for a good portion of the season as well. So I think there's lots of value late here, and I think that's what we're telling you is, you don't need to shoehorn into a particular strategy. Let the value chase the value and let it come to you because you're going to be in a better spot. I appreciate the show, my man. All the insights and everything. It's been phenomenal. Tell everyone where they can find you, although everyone already knows, but any work you've got, where the draft kit is, I'll put a link in the show notes. And then anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me, Murph. It's always great to catch up with you and talk. So yeah, people can go to FantasyPros.com, check out our draft kit, and find all that stuff. Thank you, Daniel. And check out the Fantasy Pros football podcast, the Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast, and people can find me on Twitter at Fitz_FF.
Absolutely. And you have to do that. One of the great guys, not just as an analyst, but just in turn around human beings.
Feeling is very mutual, Murph. Thank you.
No, man. I appreciate everything you do for this podcast, for me and for everyone. You're a genuine guy I just love and like family. And when I get out to Chicago, I can't wait to buy you a cold one and chat properly. But
look forward to that, Murph.
It's been a pleasure. Rush Nation, you can view everything we've got on YouTube right now, everything that we're doing. The playbook is out. Go and buy that. Join the Patreon. Join everything that we're doing. Sign up to the FFCC. We're going to close that and get that started in a couple of weeks. So a lot of donations come through this week. So do sign up to that. All the links are going to be in the show notes when this comes out. Because we'll republish it after it's gone live, obviously. Thank you very much for tuning in live. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And until then, Rush Nation will be back with another guest next week. Until then, as always, keep rushing.